could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I still wouldn't lose voters. This was stated by former President Donald Trump. Hello, my name is Kiruna Abivo, and today I'll be talking about politician glorification. The Pew Research Center is a nonpartisan American think tank based in Washington, D.C., and an analysis finds out, on average, Democrats and Republicans are further apart ideologically today than at any time of the past 50 years. As shown in my previously stated quote, politicians are extremely glorified. For example, former President Donald Trump has stated that killing somebody still wouldn't lose voters. And as shown in the statistic, this country is extremely polarized. This polarization has only gotten worse with the rise of celebrity politicians, which effects I'll dive into later. Due to the extremely divided current political state has led me to develop the following research question. Has the glorification of politicians led to further party polarization, harming the concept of democracy in the last 20 years within the United States political scene? And the fact of the matter is that the glorification of politicians has actually led to further party polarization, harming the concept of democracy within the United States due to misinformation, accountability, and violence. On this photo from the Pew Research Center, on January 6, 2021, found the defeat of former President Donald Trump in the United States presidential election, while his supporters attacked the United States Capitol building located in Washington, D.C. This is an example of the extreme harm that celebrity politicians have on this country, not only having their supporters follow them blindly, but when defeated, they turn to extreme violence, harming the House of the People, the cornerstone of American democracy, the White House itself. But my three themes that I'm presenting today are misinformation, accountability or the lack thereof, and violence. My first claim is misinformation. Politicians will utilize misinformation during a political term and campaign, and because of the extreme glorification they're under, there will be no repercussions. Here on this graph from the Washington Post, we can see the amount of false or misleading claims former President Donald Trump has made per month, and here on the bottom we can see the amount of false claims he has made per week. Former President Donald Trump is a prime example of a celebrity politician, and here we can see that on the top, on the red bar, he has made more than 4,000 false or misleading claims in a single month. And on the bottom, we can see that he has made more than 250 false claims in a single week. Misinformation leads to amplification of incorrect, biased opinions. When everybody has information which only fits a specific narrative, it only further polarizes both of the parties. This polarization harms the concept of democracy because democracy cannot be carried out on a basis of misinformation. Here on this graph from Harvard University, we can see the threat exaggerated in the red circle and the threat spread on purpose in the blue rectangle. Here we can see at 0.2 on the red that conspiracy thinking it's a 0.2 and that conspiracy thinking is exaggerated at 0.4. Not only that, but denialism is both spread and exaggerated at 0.2, both blue and the red, and here partisanship, it's spread on purpose at 0.1, it is exaggerated at 0.1. So these politicians have not only utilized the blatant misinformation to deceive their supporters, but their supporters, because of this extreme glorification that these politicians are under, have taken it of no question. This misinformation not only further polarizes both of these parties, but this polarization harms the concept of democracy because politicians are not being held accountable for the misinformation they not only spread on purpose, but they exaggerate. My second claim is the accountability or the lack thereof. Because of the glorification that these politicians are under, they have a lack of accountability for broken promises and actions. Here on this graph of a Bureau of Investigative Journalism, we can see the total people killed and total civilians reported killed by state drones under President Bush and Obama. Here we can see the blue, the minimum people reported killed, and in the red, minimum civilians reported killed. Here we can see that President Obama has killed more than 2,000 people in the blue, has killed more than 250 civilians in red. Now here in the blue, we can see that President Bush has killed almost 500 people, has killed more than 200 civilians in red. Although both of these politicians had peace-promoting campaigns, they both killed thousands of people. This is an example of a lack of accountability because although both of these politicians broke their peacekeeping promises, there's nobody to hold them accountable because of their support of the extreme glorification that they're under. This does not fit within the true concept of democracies because within democracy, politicians must be held accountable for their broken promises. My third and final claim is violence. And politicians will utilize and justify violence to get ahead of their political goals, and because of the glorification they're under, their supporters will utilize it as well. To provide some context from the meditations of Emperor Marcus Aurelius Antonius from the stimulus, but let the change be made because you really believe it to be in the interest of justice for the public good, such like, and now if any view to pleasure or glory for yourself. By glory he means pride, and when one supports a politician, for example, they get a sense of pride within them. Well, democracy can only be carried out when the votes of the people are for the public interest of good, and not for the glory or pride of a specific politician. This is the only way in which true democracy can be contained. And here from this graph and vision of humanity, we can see politicians who justify utilizing violence to advance political goals in the United States from 2017 to 2020. As you can see, in the red bar are shown Republicans, and in the blue bar are shown Democrats. Although in an extremely short amount of time, both lines have gone up considerably, and this can only be correlated with the rise of celebrity politicians. So not only have these politicians and their supporters utilize misinformation to get ahead of their political goals, they have utilized violence. This not only does not go within the concept of democracy, but it utterly dismantles it. These problems are now about solutions. But solution to claim 1 and 2 is media politician regulations. Politicians must be held accountable for any misinformation they spread and broken promises. When they're held accountable, not only is the democracy of this country protected, but so are its people. And the solution for claim free is party cooperation. Parties and politicians must stop seeing the other party's opposition or the ones who must be defeated and see eye to eye to protect this current political climate and stop the extreme polarization of this country that has only gone through with the rise of celebrity politicians. The limitations to claim 1 and 2 is lobbying. Because politicians have a lack of accountability, they will utilize this information to further polarize the party. Corporations greatly benefit from this polarization and will utilize lobbying to keep this country polarized. The limitation to claim free is unwillingness. These countries have seen each other's opposition for almost 100 years. And although not as polarized as now, this country was always still polarized. It will be very hard to get them to see eye to eye even now. These are my claims utilized. Thank you.
I have 2 questions for you. First up, what evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and then why didn't you use it?
So the evidence that I gathered that I didn't use were graphs showing just how polarized this country were. So although it's still somewhat displayed in my presentation, the polarization, I had a graph that clearly outlined it, but I didn't utilize them simply because of time constraints, because I felt that my other claims and my other graphs which I utilized were much more important because they already kind of conveyed the same message.
Okay. And what advice would you have for other researchers who consider this topic in the future?
So the advice I'll give to other researchers is simply start at examples. For example, in my slide in which I used the example of the January 6th riots, that kind of inspired me to look into other examples of celebrity politicians, such as President Obama. So the best way to kind of go about researching this topic is starting with examples and true events which showed the actual influence of these celebrity politicians.